in two parts. I'm definitely going to do today, October the 14th, in two parts. Hi, I'm Dr. Kate Walker. Welcome to Texas Counseling Creating Counselors. Sorry, that was my dog. Creating Badass Businesses. I'm so happy you're here today. If you're a grad student, I'm going to tell you what your new supervisor should be telling you. If you're a supervisor and you're new at this, or if you're an old hand, these may be some new ideas that you can give your new level 1 supervisees. You see, here's the problem. It's not really a problem, but when your supervisees graduate, they know a lot of stuff. And so if you're familiar with the knowledge, or let's just start with Maslow, right? Maslow's hierarchy of needs. Well, there's an educational kind of thing that mirrors that called Bloom's taxonomy. And with Bloom's taxonomy, you start with things that you know. And I think of that as sort of Jeopardy level knowledge, right? You can answer a question quickly, you know it, you can pass your comps, your NCE, all the things. But as a level 1 supervisee, that's not enough to establish competency. How do we know that? Well, research tells us, right? We want our supervisees to get to a place in Bloom's taxonomy where they're synthesizing, analyzing, creating new knowledge. So it's really important, supervisors, that you're able to give them a bunch of stuff at the beginning, because they're not going to know what to do, perhaps, if they have a couple who's suffering with infidelity, if they have a client who's suffering from an issue they didn't study in school, if they haven't had the training to deal with a particular issue, if they have a critical incident during the session, like a client emergency, or perhaps they themselves don't feel safe. So there are a lot of things that you must tell them. And what we teach you in the Kate Walker Training 40-hour training to become an LPC or LMFT supervisor in Texas is that you must have an orientation. I don't care if your supervisee is coming to you from a place where they have been in another town and they have supervised other people. Been with a supervisor. It's really important that you orient your new supervisee to your style, to what you need them to do. So provide an orientation, an amazing contract. We teach you all of those things in Kate Walker Training, 40-hour training to become a supervisor in Texas. And we're expanding. So our 40-hour trainings are actually going to cover the United States. We are going to have trainings in every single state. So pretty ambitious goal. But we're super excited about that because we believe that a good supervisor can help you stay in the field, and we need you to stay in the field. So a couple of things, a couple of commercials. First of all, if you're listening, or I'd love it if you could give me a thumbs up, I'm going to check my stream health. Let's see, stream health. It looks like my stream health is good, I guess. So I'm hoping. So if you're watching today, and I'm going to give you these things, and if you're watching on the replay, that's okay too, right? Just know that this is as of October the 14th, 2021. These things change so quickly. It's going to change for sure in 2022, and that's what I'm going to talk about when I present at the Texas Counseling Association Professional Growth Conference in November. I'm presenting on Thursday at 4 o'clock, and I'm going to be talking about how to supervise the new self-employed supervisee. What does that look like? What does that mean for us as supervisors? We don't know what the liability is going to look like yet. We don't know what the rules are going to be regarding records. And so I'm going to tell you what I know during that November presentation. And then after that, TACES, the Texas Association for Counselor Education and Supervision, is going to have a social where supervisors and supervisees can mix. So we're going to get together, we're going to chat. And then after that, I'm going to buy you a drink. I'm going to have a happy hour, and I've got some friends who are going to co-sponsor this with me. We are going to head over to Nick's Kitchen and Beach Bar, to the Redfish Pool Bar, and we're going to go there at 8 p.m. after the TACES mixer, and you get one drink on me. So I really hope I see you there. How do you get a ticket to my happy hour? you got to come see my presentation. So if you're at the TCA conference in Galveston, Texas, come to my presentation on Thursday at 4, then stay for the TASES mixer, and then we'll head over to Nick's pool bar and we'll have a drink on me. So I can't wait to see you guys there so I can help you start to figure out how we're going to supervise graduate students who are self-employed. If you're a graduate student and you're listening to this, I have a supervisor directory at katewalkertraining.com. Click that. You'll see a ton of supervisors. Start interviewing supervisors who are interested in supervising you if you're going to be self-employed. You may be, if you are a graduate student graduating in December, you may be the first batch of LPC associates who are allowed to be self-employed. The rule has not been established yet. We're looking at it in 2022 sometime. But if you're going to start interviewing that supervisor, it's time to start asking the question, are you going to be interested in supervising me if I want to be self-employed? If they say no, and you really want to be self-employed in your own practice, keep interviewing. Find a supervisor who understands the difference between helping you become clinically competent and helping you have a competent, thriving business. It's two different skill sets, and every supervisor is not the same. So if you are interested in that, stay tuned, because that's what this month is all about. So what are the issues that we're going to talk about? Resources for common issues. We're going to talk about assessments for safety. We're going to talk about people skills, and we're going to talk about how to create a shared folder so that you and your supervisor each are able to have access to shared material, and you don't have to worry about notes and evaluations and who's got the records and what happens if something happens to your supervisor, right? It's really, really important that you have that shared folder. So the number one resource, and I can't share my screen, so I'm going to have to share the link in the thread, and I'll be sure to do that. Number one thing, though, I need to welcome 27 new badasses to our group. We had 27 new folks join Texas Counselors Creating Badass Businesses, and I think a lot of them are coming from the Zoom meetings that Dr. Summer Allen and I are holding that are helping new graduate students transition to LPC associates. So I'm calling your names. Here I go. Jenny Stadiper Harris, Britt Hudson, Abby Ballett, Alyssa Hayes McDonald, Lawrence Egbert, Esther Matumbo, Emily Bradshaw, Danielle Patterson, Alyssa Urban, Karen Ace, Farron, Mia Velasco, Tatiana Watley, Alicata Caladini, Raven Piagui, Allison Baker Sobek, Cheryl Reilly, Sharon Green McLendon, Paris Blake, Viviana Delgado, Ramal Yosef, Margarita Romero, Alma Monica Vela, Michael Wilson, Vanessa Crown, Karen Palmer, MA, LMFT Supervisor, Registered Play Therapist, Jen Renee, Stephanie Ramirez. Welcome, you guys. I'm so happy that you're here helping us fill the gaps, close the gaps in access to affordable mental health care in Texas. And this new rule allowing associates to be in their own practice, to be self-employed. This is going to make such a huge difference in rural Texas and access to mental health care. All right, so let's talk about what we need to start with. First of all, graduate students, I want you to start thinking this is how you're going to interview your supervisor. Resources for common issues. Here are the books I make every single one of my supervisees read in the first month. Am I a hard ass? Maybe, but I don't budge on this. So the thing that here are the books they have to read. Number one, Addictive Thinking by Abraham Tversky. Number two, How to Help Your Spouse Heal from Your Affair by Linda McDonald. The Dance of Anger by Harriet Lerner. I make them read a book called No More Mr. Nice Guy, and that is by, and I'll post these in the thread. That is by, hello, come on, Robert Glover. And of course, the seminal work, Codependent No More. Those books, oh, and Sue Johnson, Hold Me Tight. I make my supervisees read that as level 1 because, as I mentioned before, actually that might have been the part where it got cut out. Every new supervisee comes to you from grad school at the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. So Bloom's taxonomy, it's basically like Maslow's hierarchy for educators. It starts off by saying, you know what you know. I call it Jeopardy knowledge, right? You're able to answer some questions quickly. That's wonderful to pass comps, pass your NCEs, pass all the things so that you're able to get your degree and your license as LPC associates, LMFT associates. Supervisors, what we're going to help you do though is get from that level 1 place to level 3. To be my colleague, you must be able to analyze the information that you know in order to create something new on the fly, quickly, under duress, with nobody looking. So in order to do that, I've got to define this level 1-ness, and as a supervisor, I've got to be okay with that. But that's not going to stop clients from coming through the door. So if you've never studied infidelity, if you've never studied addiction, or if you just have the Jeopardy knowledge of those things, reading these books will help you start to case conceptualize. It's sort of like Cliff Notes. I know you don't know what those are, but back in the day, we did that instead of reading books. These will help you start to conceptualize so you can hit the ground running with these difficult clients. So the other thing, number 2, what you need in supervisors, this is what you're going to add to your orientation. You're going to start your orientation with these resources. Supervisees or grad students, what if your client is suicidal? Do you have a quick assessment? One of the things we teach in my supervisor training is SLAP. I stole that from my supervisor, Dr. Lee. You assess suicidality, previous suicide attempts. L, the lethality of their ideation. Access, do they have access to those means? And P, do they have a plan? And then in your orientation, you teach them what to do next. Do you want them to provide an assessment? Do you want them to call 911? Remember, in Texas, for adults, it's permission to warn. With minors, a suicidal minor, it's considered a neglect if you do nothing. That's not a permission to warn, that's a duty to warn. Sometimes as supervisors, we get that mixed up. One falls under the family code and one falls under the adult code. Hold on just a second. My dogs are wanting attention. You're a good girl and you're a good boy. Everybody's good. All right. The next thing, what if your client has something happen in session that scares you, right? What if they can't breathe? What if they start having chest pain? What if suddenly they stop breathing? So during this orientation, supervisors, give them some CPR training. If you have paddles at your practice site, make sure they know how to use the defibrillator paddles. Make sure that they understand the procedures specifically to you, supervisor, the steps you want them to take. Remember, just because they're your supervisee doesn't mean they stop being a Texas citizen, right? They have their own way of doing things. So if you want them to follow specific procedures, they won't know that unless you tell them. So in the orientation, grad students, please make sure your supervisor has an orientation. Part 2, critical incidents. Make sure you understand what to do if abuse and suicidality, but also if there is a client emergency. And finally, if you, supervisee, don't feel safe. Now, there is some countertransference to deal with, right? If you're not used to the population, if you don't have the training, it's easy not to feel safe. But I know one of my supervisees revealed to me, my client said he's got a gun and some handcuffs in his backpack. She was legitimately not feeling safe, and she had every right to not feel safe. Well, we had a procedure that I trained them to follow during their orientation to make sure that they were able to stay safe. So if your agency doesn't provide that, if your practice doesn't provide that, you're going to want to make sure your supervisor gives you a procedure to follow if you don't feel safe, right? So what have we talked about? Number 1, resources for common issues, addiction, intimacy. I didn't even mention sexual and intimacy issues, infidelity. Number 2, assessments for the common things, suicidality and CPS, the not so common things, a client emergency, and if you don't feel safe. Finally, your supervisor should have a shared folder that has everything in it. This isn't the time to play gotcha, supervisors. You are literally trying to grow your supervisee into your colleague. What I've done in the past, and you can go to I'll put the link in the thread. You can go to my website, and my blog is called #Counselors for Life. There is you can peek into my Dropbox and you can see the shared folder that I have with my supervisees, and the title of the folder is Bring to Supervision Every Week. So I have their evaluations in there so that they understand what competency looks like to me. I have, because I get it, what they feel like competency is, but since I'm the gatekeeper, I get to establish competency. As they go to level 2 and level 3, we'll collaborate more on that, of course, because they're creating their own style. But in that shared Dropbox, I have everything from a note template to a supervision note template to a remediation plan template to evaluations. I keep letter templates in there for my students who are going to graduate and for my LMFT and LPC associates that are upgrading, letting their clients know they may have to have a transition if they decide to move locations, right? So everything in that folder is for the supervision experience. Now, here's one thing I will tell you, supervisors. In the latest version of the LPC and LMFT rules, you must make your notes, your supervision notes, available to your supervisee on demand. You can't say, okay, hang on, I guess you could, but you are supposed to make that very transparent, right? So one of the things we recommend, of course, is supervisee, you take the note. Take the note in session, make a copy of it, put it into a shared folder. Now you and your supervisor each have a note documenting what was said in that session. How does the supervisor know it's what they said? Because they're going to sign it before you upload it into Dropbox. If you're doing virtual supervision, then just make it an e-signature. Easy peasy, done and done, right? That's the idea. We're trying to make this efficient and easy so you guys, graduate student, supervisee, supervisor, you guys are going to have a beautiful relationship. It's going to be trustworthy. Everybody's going to grow from it. And we will fill the gaps in access to mental health in West Texas, right? That's the goal. Not just West Texas, rural Texas, everywhere. So this Thursday 30 is all about helping you get the resources you need. Grad students, start interviewing your supervisor. Go to katewalkertraining.com, click the supervisor directory. I think I have over 100 supervisors in there. If you're a supervisor, get your butts over to Texas Supervisor Training Facebook page. Once you get in that group, we give you the link so that you can make a directory listing. It's free. It's literally so that we can have more supervisors. If you're paying to be on a supervisor directory, please think again, because our supervisor directory is hitting number on page 1 in the Google search. I didn't even plan that. It's just super cool. Excuse me while I get a drink of, this is actually water, I promise. So, more information about the happy hour at the Texas Counseling Association Professional Growth Conference. Can't wait to see you guys there. I hope everybody's gonna go. And I promise you, I'm gonna make a promise today that I will figure out the technology to do a screen share, right? If gamers can do it, I can do it. I have faith in myself. All right, guys, have a super day.